Hi, I'm Mike Tate, State Chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. Today is a great day for our state. Today we are bearing witness to a million-strong miracle of democracy created by the sweat of your brow and the work of your hands. Today you have lived up to our nation's great promise, the quality that has distinguished us as a beacon of the world, the right of the people to participate in their democracy, the right of the people to petition their government for a redress of grievances is enshrined in our founding documents. And today, 1 million strong, you have done just that. Today you have said to Scott Walker and his cadres that we will not stand still and watch Wisconsin's traditions, values, and institutions be trampled upon. Wisconsin has always been a place where hard work and perseverance are rewarded. But Scott Walker came into office and began tearing down the institutions and rules that made that possible. We used to believe that any child, no matter to whom they're born, could succeed in our society. But almost a year ago, Scott Walker introduced a program of radical policies that would end that vision. So in Wisconsin, you made a stand. You stood up with the notion that one person can make a difference. You stood up for labor unions that help build the middle class. You stood up against the cynical notion that the big money polluting our democracy must always win. You stood up 1 million strong. Scott Walker has not listened, and he has made a virtue of not listening. Today, you have made him listen. And what you have accomplished in this miracle of democracy is history, not just for the great state of Wisconsin. What you have done now will be written into the history of our great nation. Only 2 other times in American history has a recall election for governor been triggered. Scott Walker's defenders on right-wing media said you would fail. Scott Walker himself belittled you. You faced intimidation, you stood up to name-calling, to foul behavior, to threats of violence. You stood in the cold, you worked through a holiday season, you gave of your time, your passion, all for the truth and fairness for Wisconsin. You persevered and you won. I said before that you were 1 million strong in this miracle of democracy, and I was not speaking in metaphor. Today you will see the evidence of your handiwork, and I can announce that your grassroots movement right now is delivering to the Government Accountability Board over 1 million signatures collected to recall Scott Walker. This represents nearly double, or 185% of the total required. It is simply breathtaking. The recalls also have submitted 845,000 signatures to force the recall of Lieutenant Governor Kleefisch, or 156% of the total. We're submitting 140% of the signatures needed to recall State Senator Terry Moulton, 134% of the signatures we need to recall Senator Pam Galloway, and 156% of the signatures needed to recall State Senator Van Wanggaard. What we have submitted today represents beyond any challenge, reasonable, legal, or otherwise. This total is enormous, but represents only a portion of the people opposed to Scott Walker's radical, divisive agenda. Only a fraction of the people who want to see him out of office. This million-strong miracle of democracy is almost the total number of votes that Scott Walker received in his election in 2010. This total is higher per capita than the recent referendum in Ohio, the 2002 recall in California, and the 1921 North Dakota gubernatorial recall. This total is much, much higher per capita than the threatened recall in 2001 in Milwaukee County that propelled Scott Walker to office. In 2001 in Milwaukee, the mere prospect that a recall had been achieved was enough for Scott Walker to demand that his opponent resign. Let me be clear. We are not calling on Scott Walker to resign today. What we are asking with this massive total, beyond any challenge, is Scott Walker face the people of Wisconsin. Scott Walker should drop any and all challenge to this election and respect the million Wisconsinites that have called for this election. Scott Walker should have the courage of his convictions and put his ideas, his cuts to education, his attack on workers, his suppression of democracy before the voters of Wisconsin as they have asked. We call on Scott Walker to stop the legal maneuvers and put his warped vision of Wisconsin to the test. Celebrate today your great accomplishments, but let's get ready for the work ahead to not just recall Scott Walker, but to replace him. Because when, not if, an election against Scott Walker is triggered, I am confident that you will be there yet again to answer the question of who runs the show here in our great Wisconsin? Who decides the future of our working families? And who will honor our values and traditions? That answer is not Scott Walker. The answer, of course, is you.